If you're an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then welcome to the UK Property Market Stat Show. My name is Christopher Watkin, and I'm here today with special guest Toby Phillips. We'll come to Toby in a second. Why should you watch this show? Well, the British are obsessed with the property market, and whenever the Land Registry publish information, it's always front page news. But I don't know if you're aware, they're looking at sales that were agreed 8, 9, 10 months ago. The Halifax and Nationwide, when they publish something about the property market, you're looking at sales from 2 or 3 months ago. But we are looking at last week's property market, week 10, and we're going to analyse, myself and Toby, the year-to-date figures up to week 10 and week 10 alone compared to the other week 10s going back to 2017. For those of you who have not watched the show before, the show will last approximately 1 hour and is split in two. The first half, as I said, is looking at the UK property market, and then the second half is where we go to an area and we analyse who we consider is the best estate agent using data. This week we are going slightly off piste and we're looking at the Golden Triangle of Cheshire. It's where all the footballers live from Manchester and the northwest. And we're looking at Alderley Edge, Wilmslow, Prestbury and also Knutsford. And we're going to be analysing all the agents in that area and seeing who performs the best. It's a fascinating area, and if you are an agent from that area, you certainly will be wanting to watch that part of the show. If you are an agent who suffers from overvaluing or cheap fees and you're looking for a way to lift yourself and show that you're a better agent, you might want to watch that part of the show as well yourselves, because we're going to be using a piece of kit that can analyze a estate agent's performance and prove that you are the better agent by the stats that are on the screen. Obviously you need to be better, so do watch that part of the show even if you're not from North Cheshire, South Manchester. This week, as I said, I'm joined by Toby Phillips. Toby Phillips is part of the Property Franchises Group senior team here, and he is responsible for a number of brands in the Property Franchise Group. He knows his stuff. Toby, thanks for joining me today. Just remind the ladies and gentlemen the brands that you are responsible for in the Property Franchise Network Group, because I believe it's over 300 branches.
We've got a fair few growing daily, Chris, but morning, great to be back on. Thank you for inviting me again. Certainly it's definitely one of these mornings I really enjoy, being a bit of an analyst, stats geek at times. So I look after nationally, Chris, the Martin & Co brand. That's across the UK. I then look after 5 what we call xPerience brands, which are CJ Hole in the Bristol area, Parker's in the Berkshire Reading area, and into Oxford. I also then look after Ellis & Co, which is predominantly North London. We've got other branches outlying. I look after Country Properties, which the mainstays in the Hertfordshire area, and a brilliant brand called Mullocks, which a number of you will have heard of, which is very much into Bishop Stortford and that Essex corridor. So around, for me, it's around about 220 front doors.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, Toby's got a long history in estate agency and he's not afraid to speak his mind. So you'll certainly get great value from him today. But thanks for joining me today, my friend. I think it's been about 3 months since you've been on the show. So you've been sorely missed and we look forward to seeing what you've got to say today. So without further ado, let us crack on and go and look at the first part of the show, which is the UK property market. So for those of you who've not watched the show before, I spend 30 seconds going through each metric and then we go to Toby and ask his thoughts. As is always, we start with listings, and this week we have put onto the market 39,740 properties. Okay, hold on, where has that gone back? I've lost it. What are you like? I'm not on form today. Let's go share again. There we go, share. Can you still see it?
Yeah.
I'm lost it. We'll have to bring it back. Not being very professional today. Right, we brought it back. Here we go. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm having to not work from my usual location today, ladies and gentlemen. So I do, things are a little bit alien, but we'll come back online. Here we go. The average price of a property put on the market is 436,000. The year-to-date figure is that we've put on 361,600 properties. And to give you an idea of where we stand in the marketplace, we are 1.2% higher than last year. We are 8.7% ahead of 2024, and we are 20% ahead of 17, 18, and 19. And again, the white line there is what this year's figures are. And then you've got the orange line, which is 2025. And what's your thoughts, Toby?
Very indicative, Chris. I think what's interesting within the marketplace is this is now, if we compare like for like, we're probably a reasonable percentage higher in terms of new instructions. There is certainly more supply coming to the market and on the market than we've seen in previous years. Interesting for me, Chris, as we sit here mid coming up to the like March, those Q1 figures in terms of instructions to completion will be the interesting part. And again, whether these prices are going to hold or whether we're going to see some interest in terms of reductions going on. But in terms of the volume, Chris, exactly what we're seeing. But we are seeing now more, certainly more coming to market than we've seen probably over the last since COVID.
Well, this graph here shows us the total number of properties. So the turquoise numbers here, ladies and gentlemen, are the number of properties that were for sale on the 28th of February going into opening the doors on the 1st of March. And we always do it at the end of the month. And you can see that we've the same years compared, the year ago it was 675. And again, as you notice, that it always takes off. So December is always the low month. January, the number of stock increases and it will increase again, and it will continue to increase, and it will get, if again, we can actually predict within a few thousand what the months will be. And, if you look at past trends, it's going to get up to around 730,000, 740,000 by late spring, early summer, and then she'll
Yes.
drift off. I just love the cyclical nature of that. The shape of every graph, apart from the COVID years, is almost identical. Yeah, but again, it's all about supply and demand, ladies and gentlemen. And what we've got to remember is if there's too much supply and not enough demand, which happened in 2008, that's when house prices drop. So we will be looking at withdrawals. We can see the stock levels here. But you're absolutely right, Toby. It is about putting the right properties on the market at the right price. We are almost copying what I just isn't it amazing? And I just cannot get my head around it. Is that we are matching the shape of listings every single week
Yeah.
perfectly to last year. Look, up, down, up, down, So, next week, the number of properties that come onto the market will probably be in the order of around 37,000. And, I don't see any reason why it won't, but we'll soon find out next
No,
week.
almost, and I think that's not it's not unusual. I think if we look outside of our industry, the only factors we'll build into that is anything economically or in the world going on. That again, but again, I think where we get to this start of the year, it's not a surprise. We're seeing more coming on. The prices are holding. And again, it'd be interesting coming back on the show in 3 months' time when we've got some raw data in terms of the completions in the business, just what the conversion rate is between these instructions from January to what's actually completed in July, and how far we are from that asking price. So, again, very normal market, affordability's there, people now wanting to move, wanting to make that move, but also is as you quite rightly say, that supply, there'll be a critical point where price will become a factor in certain areas.
It certainly will. And again, for ladies and gentlemen, when we didn't mention this at the top of the show, we're looking at week 10, and week 10 is Monday, the 9th of March, all the way through to include Sunday, the 15th of March. So I just wanted to I forgot that we mentioned that at the top of the show. Again, as I said, I'm all sixes and sevens at the moment, simply because I said I'm not in my normal environment. But hopefully we're producing a good show for you here. Let's move on to price reductions. And we reduced 22,891 properties last week. Again, remembering that there's 682,000 properties for sale. The average price of a property being reduced is 396. And again, we do this in month in arrears. But again, if you look at the figures and can't work them out, we're still at these sort of levels that we are only reducing 11.4% of the homes, or one in nine, which again, and we say this most weeks. Again, I don't think that's with regard to the fact that we're only really selling one in two homes at the moment, and I say this every week. Reducing one in nine properties a month is not good enough, is it?
Well, no, Chris. I think one of the stats that we're looking at very hard is length of time on market. We're seeing agency agreements now being extended, to the 20 weeks and past. But again, it's recording now from day one. How long is it taking to actually get that achievable offer? Open chains now creeping into the business as well. So again, when we're sale agreeing, especially at the upper end, what we're going to talk about a bit later, the open chains for where those people go next. That's also quite an interesting development now. But I think that's not high enough to make an impact. The volume and the value of those reductions will be a deciding factor as we move forward.
It is because, I mean, let's be frank, there are some estate agents who, are very famous for their salami price reductions, sign them up for 26 weeks and then salami them off, a couple of grand every time. That isn't good estate agency. And as Ian White always says, is if you do overvalue it, get it down. But if you are going to get it down, you've got to give them a price that actually frightens them. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are an estate agent and you want some great scripts on how to approach vendors with price reductions, if you text me on my mobile, I will send you some scripts on how to deal with overvaluing, and also how to get how if agents sorry if homeowners try and chip you on the fee, how to back those back. So I'll give you my mobile number, and all you need to do is text me the word scripts. My number is 07950 Text me the word scripts. I will send you the scripts, and I will not approach you or call you again unless you call me. And as I said, that's completely free of charge. We've got over 15 scripts on all different scenarios that you can use to help you be better estate agents. Let's move on to said agreeds. And again, this is the first full week of the Iran crisis. And again, there was concerns by someone, would it affect the property market? Well, let's have a look, ladies and gentlemen. No, it has not done anything to the property market. In fact, the number of properties sold subject to contract last week was 25,600, and this week, as I said, it's 26,330. So
No impact.
it hasn't affected the property market yet. Will it? It could do. But everyone seems to be getting on with their lives and ignoring what's happening a third of the way around the world. But as I said, the white line is the sale agreed this year compared to last year at 2025. Last year was a better year for sales, and we'll just put some numbers on that. That we are 5.5% year to date behind 25. We are 8.6% ahead of 24, though, and we are 18.1% ahead of 17, 18, and 19. So again, if the doom mongers amongst, if you need a great stat, to get a price down, you obviously use the against last year. If you need a stat to get someone on the market and say it's really good, you compare it against 24. Remember, lies, damn lies, and statistics. But these are stats that are absolutely bang on. They all come from the 20A platform, so they're really, really good. And I have cross-referenced these small, medium, and large firms, and I would say their accuracy rate is in the order of around 98 to 99%. Is it perfect? It isn't, but it's pretty darn good. And that's our year-to-date figures in terms of gross sales. Again, one issue with 2025 is that we did have some sales at the start of January in 25, which bumped that figure up. But we are still a little bit behind. 25 was a damn good year, but it's better than 24. Thoughts, scores on the doors, what are you thinking on the sales?
So for me, Chris, it's interesting where we're saying there hasn't been an impact. And if you look at everything else that's going on in the world, taking the Iran crisis out of it for a moment, we're in a marketplace where we've got more properties coming on than we've seen in the last 5 years. We've got a higher asking price coming in, and we've got lower interest rates, and we've got affordability. If you think average wage going up around about 4.7 to 4.8%, if you look at the pitch we're playing on, it's so much better than it was last year. However, the number of sale agreeds is down. So it would say to me there is an impact, there is some nervousness, there is some sort of conscious people not making that commitment in terms of buying, because actually if you looked at this from a helicopter viewpoint, this year is not even argue factually, it's a better it's a better market than we had last year, although we're not agreeing as many sales. Now, this could be, as I said earlier, we've got a lot of open chains where people are reaching that top end, coming back down, downsizing, whatever. So what I'm seeing in my business is the number of incomplete chains. But looking at the other end, at certain price points, Chris, interest rates, affordability, making it more affordable. Some of the LTV schemes out there at the moment to get people onto the ladder are much better than we've had over the last 5 years. So being down on sales just on those facts, that's surprising, and it is definitely, with the supply growing, one that agents need to watch.
Again, it's like anything, glass half full or glass half empty. And you have a responsibility, estate agents watching this, to get the message out. Be truthful. You can't, let's don't pull the wool over the eyes. And if you're trying to persuade you haven't got to persuade someone, but the bottom line is that the property market carries on as it are. People always need to move, and it's your job to get the houses on the market and get the flipping thing sold. The question is, how many houses that you are putting on are you actually selling? And we are selling more than, as I said, a couple of years ago. But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on
Also,
to
Chris, I think the one comment I'd make on instructions at the moment is this market does breed what I call souvenir collectors. And that's not the way to finish your year up. So people collecting instructions at extremely cheap fees, just because more the merrier. It isn't the best business model. When the supply's there, it's all about quality of your instruction, the right price point in the right area. So make sure that you're doing your research in terms of where you're touting, where you're canvassing, what's moving in your area. But the last point I would make on this is the time now to really look at your charges, because everything in the world is going up around us. And actually, the one thing that hasn't altered is agency fees. And I live in the south, so we've probably got out of jail the last few years due to house price increases. But if you look at charges, this is the optimum time where stock is plentiful, but actually it's about what your value is, and making sure that doesn't degrade between the instruction and the exchange fee.
Absolutely right. Again, those younger agents. Again, we used to Toby and I would know about this because when we had hair, or actually dark hair, we would remember the valuer's triangle, and the valuer's triangle is is that you put the word vendor motivation on one end of the triangle, and then you put fee on the one of the other ones, and then you put asking price on the other. So you've got vendor motivation, fee, and asking price. My area manager told me when I were a lad, which was 1993. Can you remember my word? Um, Christopher, you do not put a house on the market unless you've got two of those. And if you've got an unmotivated vendor and a shit asking price, it doesn't matter that the fee's great. They ain't going to sell it because they're not motivated. But and the most important one is obviously vendor motivation. And again, you're absolutely right. Antique hunters. I love that phrase. I'm going to steal that one off you, my friend. But bottom line is this. The biggest issue with estate agents at the moment is that their ego won't allow them to lose the listing because it hurts them so much, and their feelings. We've got to learn to be able to walk away from them, because just because you've hit your target and you can win a bottle of champagne from or cheap prosecco at the area managers meeting, you're dealing with people's lives here. And it doesn't matter that you're going to earn 20 quid listing bonus. You're going to mess their lives up because you overvalued it. And if you're not putting it on at the right price with a decent fee, then what are you here for? A lot of people don't disagree with me, but again, I just think it's no wonder we're considered unprofessional.
Look, fishing the right ponds, Chris, is the message I would say. So, look at what is moving in your area. What price points are moving? Is it 300, 400, 500? It may be the top end of the market has really shrunk. So again, making sure you're spending your money to win the right instructions, that are moving. And actually, we've got a lot of data now that directs us into those right streets, right estates, in able to do that.
Yeah, and again, for those of you that haven't got that sort of data, here's just a really quick win for you. Um, Go onto Rightmove, see how many properties are for sale in the whole of your town, add in sole subject to contracts, and then that difference between two numbers is the number of solds, and then basically divide one by the other to get what percentage of homes are for sale or sold subject to contract. Do that in price range, do that in type, do that on housing estates, and you will see which ones are selling really well and which ones are not. And therefore, there's no point in putting on a list of coffee table listings that look the part but are not selling. There's some posh houses out there, but if they're not selling, there's no point in putting them on the market if they ain't going to sell, especially with the triangle. Let's move on. Resi sale through rate. 15.4% of the homes that were on the market on estate agents' books sold subject to contract last month. Let's move, which again, we say this most weeks. If in COVID times, post COVID, we were only selling just less than one in three of our books. Most people thought it was much higher than that. It wasn't. The percentage difference between the average price of all listings and the asking price at this week was 19.6. What do we mean by that? The average price coming on the market, 436. The average price selling, 364. Again, we are not saying that all properties are being dropped by, near as damn it, 60, 70 grand. We're saying the average listing price was 436. And of the homes that are selling, the average price of it being sold is 364. So again, this is absolutely bang on what Toby says is this. If you want to actually earn some money, the lower to middle market at the moment is, and it always has been, is where you have more sales. You can put the posh stuff on, but less of them sell. What you've got to do is work out what the fees are on the big ones to make it worth your while that you might only be selling one in four, even one in five. But again, that's what good estate agency is. But again, what Toby says is some people just want everything, don't they, Toby? You've got to specialize and work out where
You,
your
you,
market.
and I think again, when you've got that nice big house, you get known for that end of the market, and that's brilliant. And again, that's how brands evolve, that's how agents evolve. But when you're looking at the cost base, for example, Chris, of portal costs at the moment, if you look at how much it's costing you to put that on. What you've also got to do is you've got to make sure you've got the balance across the board. So what we always class is you've got to have your majority bread and butter and the cream being your top end. Now, because you also want to be known for selling that quality, that price of property. So again, it's very much looking at that daily, weekly to say, where are we spending our money? And what is our return? And interesting, when we look at the 15% sell through rate, if we went back uh, before 17 all the way down to 1990, our figure was always around 12%. So, we are selling more, and that's because we've got more channels to advertise properties, we've got more data, we've got more radius. But for me, it's having that balance across your books, but also making sure your brand grows in the right direction. So it's a real balance in that, Chris.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Right, let's move on to fall throughs. Again, ladies and gentlemen, all these graphs are available to download. Please don't use them on social media because my fee-paying agent clients, who I ghostwrite local property market content for, have the ability to use these graphs on social media. So it wouldn't really be fair for you to use them on social, but I don't mind you downloading them and using them on vendors in the home just to prove that you know what you're talking about. Fall throughs, 5,156 this week, which worked out at 19.58. The long-term average of fall through rates is 24.2%. So the fall through rates have been particularly low. Now, since Christmas, ignore the Christmas spikes because the numbers are so low that you only need a few numbers either way and it spikes it up. Look at the trend. Now, Brian Mansell, who's responsible for Gazelle, who do the reservation agreements, said it is always lower at the start of the year because you stripped your pipeline out in December. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a stat which I think is important. Is a lot of agents are feeling the pinch at the moment, and that's because the number of exchanges year to date in 2025 is 20% less than it was in 2025. That's that. So there are a lot of, we always know Q1 is a tough old quarter, but it is particularly tough this year because the agents' pipelines are good. Let's just have a quick look at pipelines. So this is agents' sales pipelines. We're on 434,000, but because we had a decent Q4, a lot of those are not going to be exchanging this quarter. Yeah, it's been a tough one. Are you noticing that it's been a tough old quarter?
We are, Chris, and I think the pipelines are coming back to the comparison because actually the front end sales has been good the last 2 months. Certainly February was a really good month for us, but it's not a surprise. And I think one of the bits that you read, and I totally agree with Brian on this, you will see a clear out in December, rather that exchanges or just so you get a true opening pipeline, but also I think where we are seeing in the marketplace, and some of the listeners might read onto this, is the gulf between leasehold exchanges and freehold exchanges. Again, getting those management packs in, and I'm speaking to agents who are actually walking away from leasehold instructions at the moment, but or actually what I'm encouraging people to do is increase your fees because it's going to take you that much longer to get paid. So I think pipeline turn at the moment is a challenge. Will it get any better? I can't foresee it. I think it's all about what you do when the sale's agreed and actually be on it in the first 4 weeks. But I think we're going to see that throughout the year, Chris. And, I'm going to show my age a little bit now. When we're business planning back in the day, we were business planning at 4 times turn. Now I'm business planning at 2 to 2.5 times turn. And that's in a freehold marketplace.
Absolutely fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, basically, again, when we had hair or dark hair, we basically, whatever your sales pipeline is, pound notes, what that means is that you would get that 4 times a year. As you say, you're at 2.5. It just things are much slower. Again, just let's just remind ourselves, you were spot on there with regard to Q4. This was Q4 here. There was a strip out of an awful lot of exchanges in October, November here,
Strong end.
much higher than other. Got to ignore you've got to ignore the COVID years. But what that means is that the numbers in the pipeline are still, but it's a lot of young stock, and you're not going to get paid on it until probably May or June. So hang in there, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get back to next. So we'll do pipelines. No, not pipelines. Resi sell through rate. So you can see the numbers are lower. This is an important stat. This showing the percentage of sales pipeline last month. So therefore, this is not looking at on a weekly basis. This is looking at on a monthly basis. And I think this is the most important stat there is what percentage of your sales pipeline fell through last month. And again, it was around 4.9%. So if you're higher, then you're above the national average. If you're lower, then you're better than the national average. But again, we said last week is I find it fascinating that over 2,000 estate agents in the UK use reservation agreements, and that's just through Gazelle. I know others are available. So could some of this be the fact is that some smart estate agents are actually using reservation agreements? Because again, as Toby rightly said, the two things that will get your pipeline through quicker and more likely to stay stable are get the solicitors instructed, especially on leasehold, but freehold, there's no harm. And if anyone says it's going to stop you getting listings, that's a load of crocker. What's name? It will get you. It's your mindset that's getting in your way, or more importantly, probably your valuer's mindset. And then the second one is reservation agreements. They are absolutely wonderful. Again, if they're sold well, then they're a listing getter, not a listing blocker, if you sell it in the right way.
Especially Chris with the reservation fees that we're seeing at the moment, and obviously we use a whole different trance of of companies go to just springs to mind in terms of that reservation fee, and you mentioned Brian's business. Where the real concept is at the moment is we're seeing is a spike in reservation fees once the property has fallen through for the first time, whether that's fallen through with us or whether it's fallen through with someone else. The ability to tout that fall through now and introduce reservation fees because it's not widely being used, Chris. So after those fall throughs, 5% last week, again introducing that to your competitor's vendor who's bit down the dumps, is certainly we're certainly seeing a spike in that being used.
Good stuff. Use someone else's pain for your advantage. Again, all's fair in love and war. I don't care what you say. Right, net sales. So again, net sales are really good this week, 21,172, because that means that we are now, okay, on gross sales, we were over 5.5% less than last year, but because fall throughs are lower this year to date, net sales, we'll do the year to date figures, we're only 3% off what we were last year. So what didn't look so good on gross sales, net sales is much better. We're 8.4% ahead of 24, 24% ahead of 23, and we're 14.9% ahead of 17, 18, and 19. So again, be absolutely chuffed to bits. Again, there is the graphs. We've brought in the COVID years just to give you some context. Again, I find it fascinating that that was lockdown, and then we had the crazy year afterwards in 21. But again, track it. Look at the red figure, which is 21. Sorry, 25. We're doing all right. Okay. Couple of little extras. Price changes as a percentage of listings. Gross sales as a percentage of listings. We've already talked about this. This is exchange versus withdrawn. This figure will change throughout the month because there is a 3 or 4 week delay on exchanges. So just keep an eye on that one. You said you wanted this. Of the properties that left estate agents' books in February, 50.3% of them exchanged, whilst the other 46.1% withdrew unsold. And again, we say this every single week. This really is estate agency's dirty secret that you have a 1 in 2 chance of moving the home. I think this is absolutely appalling. I will bang on about this every single week. That
This
you
is
have,
to be honest, Chris, the biggest unknown KPI. We will talk about MAs to instructions. We'll talk about a whole host of things. The KPI for 26 for me is all about what I'm taking on to what I'm completing. And again, that will move my canvassing, it will move my fee structure, it will move everything I do, especially on the backdrop of what I'm achieving against asking price. So for me, I've seen agents outside of my group, at 30% because they've collected the souvenirs and actually they're rolling out a third of what they're taking on now. If you imagine, Chris, costs of putting something on the market at the moment, we've had this debate before, 16, 1700 quid, portal costs, probably going north in this environment at the moment. This for me is where your eyes need to be.
absolutely bang on. And again, in the show, when we go to the Golden Triangle, we will be really focusing on those numbers, particularly because it is the most important. Yes, the first one is did you sell it or not? The second one is what did you get a decent price? Which again is important, but I think it's the more important one is did you actually do the job you were paid for? And
And also, Chris, this retains your staff. So if you're in an office of two sales negotiators, and you're getting 50% away, and it's even when you are getting away, it is a very, very low fee. Sales negotiators will look at other industries. They will say, I'm not earning what I'm going to earn here because what's coming on the market, quite frankly, is not good. And if it is good, we are racing to the bottom to get it, and it's affecting my commission. And actually, it's not a good world to be in. So the biggest thing is staff retention. They need the value. So it's not just can I get this on and get a wooden dollar payment for getting instructions on it. What am I being paid for me and my team upon the completion of my efforts?
absolutely bang on. And again, I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this one. That's why the splitting up of the neg and the valuer role back in the late 70s, early 80s was the start of the demise of us going from being professionals to an industry. And until we take personal responsibility, the self-employed model or the percentage that they actually sell is a hell of a lot more. We've quoted, I haven't got the numbers to hand at the moment, and I'm not on my normal computer, but the numbers are absolutely amazing. But again, I'm not all self-employed estate agents. Those, that you are a part of the franchise networks, your franchise numbers are exceptional, and there are some decent regional estate agents that have great percentages as well. It all comes down to the mindset of the person running the business and the person who's at the coalface with the vendors. Let's just carry on. We've done the number of properties for sale. We've done pipelines. Sale agreed. The yellow line, this is a metric which not many people use, but I'm a big fan of judging the property market by the pound per square foot. Ignore the red line because that's new listings. And again, flowery stuff in the clouds. We're putting on the market stuff at 397. If you look at the yellow line and the purple line, that is the pound per square foot. Now, the yellow line, which is sold subject to contract, matches the land registry with a 98% correlation, albeit 5 months in advance. So if you want to know what the land registry is going to do 5 months in advance, you follow that yellow line. And you can see there, Toby, that since 22, it's been bumbling along here or there. That's why house prices are up 1 or 2%, and they're down. Fundamentally, they're about the same. And that's why it's really important that you get your fees up to enable you. Otherwise, you can't rely on house prices to get your fee up, and your costs are going up.
Absolutely, and it couldn't be more, especially if you are running a business that is uh, highly percentaged on sales. So if you're not running a lettings business and you're really reliant on it, your fee structure has to be dissected and examined because otherwise survival. And again, Chris, we've talked about where that mid market is. That also will probably predominantly bring you more financial services, bring you more conveyancing, which again will put income in the pot. So again, it's very much looking at your fee structure in a sales dominated business. If you're not going to put your fee up, how else are you going to add value in this marketplace? And that will be from targeting those houses where predominantly we will see an influx of the 85% of the marketplace that's getting a mortgage at the moment, for example.
The and you're right. And again, a big tip for you, ladies and gentlemen. And I do this exercise in 100 locations every single year, and it has not changed for the last 7 years. Okay, but here is if you want to target a particular area, in terms of market, hear this because I'm a bit of a data geek. 50% of the sales exchanges that will take place this year and next year and every year, and this has happened every single year for the last 7 or 8 years, is this. Here, put your ears back, ladies and gentlemen. 50% of the properties that will exchange contracts, there is a certain criteria that always takes place and takes place in every location in the UK apart from prime central London. Here it is. The homeowners have been in the home between 3.5 and 5.5 years. That's number one. They live in first time seller homes and second time seller homes. So therefore, if you want to target a particular thing, if you've an established estate agent, you target every single person who bought a house off you in a first-time seller and a second-time seller home that been in the house between 3.5 and 5.5 years. If you are a new baby agent and you haven't got that database, go to Rightmove, put in terrace houses if they're first-time seller or second-time seller or whatever type of house, and keep scrolling down until you get to 3.5 years. And then you've got all the addresses of all the properties that sold between 3.5 and 5.5 years. Those are your hot list. You've got the addresses. Start putting stuff through the letterbox, sending them stuff in envelopes, stuff that's interesting about the market. You could probably even give them an updated valuation or whatever. You say, look at your house. If you want a valuation, this is what I think it's worth. That's where you said fish in the ponds, but the ponds that have got fish in, and that is what you should be targeting on. Okay, right. We said we'd get off some horses, and let's get off the horses. Anything you want to say, or do you want to save it to the end that you've seen so
Just
far?
one thing to follow on, Chris, from what you've just said. You can see where we're heading towards in the market by in terms of the number of supply. There'll be some key trigger points in canvassing, Chris, out there at the moment. One of them will evolve around price reductions. So if you are targeting the right area from a price reduction of 4 to 6 weeks, that will be a sweet spot. Each area will have a different sweet spot, but one of the big things, and again, the data that we've got, the franchise group, we are looking, again, at where our franchisees spend the money, first of all, but also where we can gain more profitable market share. Part of this market at the moment will be targeting those agents where they have a fluffy price reduction. It won't be meaningful. It won't add the click-through rate. But are we targeting those price reductions 4 to 6 weeks? Because that is when probably our relationship with the vendor won't be as good if we haven't performed or actually bit the bullet, reduced it enough. So big canvassing, which you exactly as you've just said, Chris, but being smart about it and canvassing when people are probably looking to move away from their agent.
There you go. So Toby said target properties that are on the market with other agents with certain trigger points, price reductions is one. And then if you want to go fishing in the properties that are not on the market, but have been there 3.5 to 5.5 years, that's where you should be putting your smart efforts. Right.
Definitely.
That's the end of the first part of the show. Now let us go to the Cheshire Golden Triangle. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we are using a piece of kit called Insight. Insight is something from the 20EA or 20CI firm. Insight is one of a number of platforms that 20EA have. But in this particular one, the Insight is a bit like Rightmove Plus on steroids with lasers and glitter balls. It analyzes the last 5 years plus the year that we are in. If anyone's got any issue with regard to the stats, you can contact 20EA yourself. The Insight platform is available. There's a free version, which only gives you 3 months worth of data, but gives you a facility to play. It has all the stuff I'm going to show you today, but sorry, just 3 months worth. Then there is their paid for package. And again, I'm not going to mention figures. I am not on commission, although I believe I am their best salesperson. For 10 postcode districts, it's the cost of a decent Chinese takeaway or Indian takeaway from your favorite takeaway establishment, plus a couple of bottles of wine a month. That's roughly what it costs. Okay. Then there is a regional one, and then there is a national one. And the only difference between them all is just the geographical reach of what you're looking at. As I said, if you have an issue with the data, please contact 20EA themselves. I have cross-referenced this against small agents, medium agents, big agents, PLCs and everything. And I would say their accuracy rate is in the order of around 98 to 99%. It's not perfect, but I'll tell you here and now, the number of firms that use this data and use it is you'll be amazed how many agents use it. I'm a massive fan of it. I know Toby is as well. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at the Golden Triangle. So for those of you who have not been to the Golden Triangle, it's the bit of South Manchester, and you have Alderley Edge, Wilmslow in the centre. You have Prestbury off to the right in the east, and depending on who you talk to, Knutsford, which is off to the left, a bit further west. Some people say it's in the Golden Triangle. If it was, it makes it almost a trapezium. It doesn't sound as good, but for the purpose of this, I am including Knutsford. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at the stats. For the benefit of everyone watching, I'm just going to switch off the new homes because I think that just takes it skews the figure slightly. So you're aware the postcode districts that we are looking at are SK10, SK9, and W16. There are some, and these are all the postcode districts that we are covering today. Okay, so again, some of the data in here, if you've got sales outside that particular area, then they're not going to be counted in this. The facilities allow you to look at, as I said, the last 5 years plus the year we're in, and allows you to measure all those metrics there. You can see here that the number of properties coming on the market. So again, if we look at February, 283 properties have come onto the market in the area in February, and if we compare that against the year before, 267. So you can get a flavour of the market, and there is a marked increase of listings in March. The gap between February and March is quite a jump, and it doesn't happen that much in the UK. So again, a very seasonal market that is really good in the spring. And again, in December, the low figures. Again, normally the rest of the UK, the difference between December and October is not normally 50%. So an old traditional estate agency market. Again, let's look at the average price. The average price of a property coming onto the market in the last 5 and a bit years is £628,000. That is a big number. And of course, there's stuff below that, but there's some big numbers above it. The number of properties that have come onto the market is 15,007. Let's just compare that against the number of exchanges. So you can see that the exchange rate, we divided one by the other, is around the 60 to 65% mark, which again, if you recall from the first part of the show, was around the 53% mark. So by putting a house on the market in the triangle or the trapezium, you have a greater chance of getting it shifted. Interestingly, look at the average price of the exchange, 544, which means that the higher priced properties have a lower propensity to sell. We will be looking at this in a greater detail. So without further ado, let's go and look at see who's moving and who's shaking. Again, Toby, just jump in at any time, my friend. Gascoigne Hallman. Okay, let's have a look. So again, a classic market share leader. Bit spiky that one, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah. Mm. Very, very spiky. And again, where the troughs are, you wouldn't expect.
So Gascoigne Hallman, they're part of a network. Let's just remind ourselves that they're which agency because I think
Tunnels.
Connells, they're part of the Connells group. So do they suffer from the December Boxing Day? Let's have a look. No, they don't. That's interesting. So Gascoigne Hallam do not follow the uh, Boxing Day promotion. They might do it, but it's certainly not doing anything in the Golden Triangle. Again, that might be deliberate, or just the people in the Golden Triangle are not affected by the Boxing Day Bonanza. I've got a problem with Boxing Day Bonanza. Okay. And I believe they have three branches in this network. Okay, let's go and look at Jordan Fishwick, which are a regional player. Looks like you're having a bit of a bad month, start of the month there. Let's go and just check, or just as a matter of courtesy, let's tuck it back. Let's do whole months. Okay, so it does look like Jordan Fishwick are having a slightly bad start to the March, but I'm sure they'll pull that back. But again, look at this, Toby. Spiky as hell. Look, 6% market share, 12% market share, 7% market share, 10%. Again, I wouldn't expect that amount of spikiness. I would expect it lower end.
I would. Interesting, Chris. On that agent there, can we just check the exchanged number? Because that might tell us a different story.
976. We will be going up. We will be looking at the exchange figures in a lot more
So they're a
detail.
little bit again with that. Again, you could say a fairly slick, organised operation in terms of the return on instructions. But again, yeah, the spikiness which you're quite rightly say at this end of the market you wouldn't often see.
Okay, so again, Jordan Fishwick 462, Gascoigne Hallam 611. So again, the average is 628. So Gascoigne Hallam are in the mix in terms of the average, and you can see the mix. You can see here what their mix is, but they're more towards can you see that it's growing up
Yeah,
as you go up there? But if you look at Jordan Fishwick, look, their peaks are a little bit further down. Let's look at Stuart Rushton. 884. So they're obviously upper quartile. Their average, as I said, is at 884. Again, spikiness, fascinating.
yeah,
I've not seen
absolutely.
many locations with such spikiness. Here we go. Reed's Rains at 367, and their market share is drifting slightly. Again, I really am fascinated by this spikiness. Let's go and look at Holmes Nadine or Nadine. Again, looks like you've had a bad start to 26. I'm not criticizing. I'm just expressing an opinion. Your average is 554. So again, what are you doing there with your marketing? Bridgefords, nice and steady. Have we got any Christmas spikes here?
Have a look.
Yeah, there you
There we
go.
go.
There you go. Although not a particularly big one this year. So Bridgefords, what did you do? Did you not do your Boxing Day promotion? There you go. Holden and Prescott, 300,000, nice and steady. Savills up to 1.2 million, market
Big
share, nice.
spike there, Chris.
Say again.
Big spike. Something's happened there at the turn of the year. So
Okay.
again,
Well, we will have a look. We'll go look at the upper quartile in a second.
yeah,
Okay.
I'd expect Savills to trade well in this market.
Well, it is their sort of patch. Earnhams, let's go. Andrew Knowles, nice and steady. Jackson Stops. Wow, 2.4. They seem
We
to
just have
be.
a quick look at purple bricks as well, because again, the first self-employed model I've seen on here.
Alan Lee, you're at the lower end in terms of your average price at 290. Michael Chapman, 640. Purple bricks dropping as what they have done for last year. That is in line with the national figures. Mela Braggins, guy, it looks like you're having a bad year there. Not criticizing. Right Marshall, again, Michael Hart, slightly growth there. Whitaker Biggs, it's very interesting. Jordan Halstead, right? EXP are coming out.
That's it. Yeah.
Just do these just for the benefit of there might be an agent in those locations. We won't discuss them. Okay, let's have just a quick look at the upper quartile because again, it is the posh area. We'll go million plus. And now, hold on a second. Let's move that back there.
Just while
And
you're flicking through, Chris, it'd be interesting from the first part of the show, a statement you made about self-employed agents and their sales through rate being better. Be interesting if that holds up at this end of the market.
it is interesting, although it doesn't look like the self-employed model is making a break in this particular market.
That's what I'm seeing. Is it price sensitive? And is it based on a lower volume?
Potentially, I mean, again, we are hitting a million here. So it appears now that Stuart Rushton's, Gascoigne's, Savills, and Jackson Stops are moving up the market. Let's try 1.5 million and just see if that changes in any way. Now, all of a sudden, Jackson Stops are at number one, quite a dominant market share at 19%. Stuart
Yes.
Rushton's giving them a run for the money, and so Savills. Let's look at two, because again, the purpose of this is to see we've picked this because it's particularly interesting. And again, look, Jackson Stops,
Yeah.
almost over nearly one in three people go
Makes
for that.
sense, Chris.
Okay. I have looked at their marketing at Jackson Stops because I always like to analyze stuff before I do the show, and you really ought to see their marketing, Toby. It is jaw-droppingly good in terms of the way they present their properties. I think you can
A
order.
really good outfit, Chris, at this
Yeah, yeah,
end.
yeah, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some Jackson Stops around the country that are pretty average, but yeah, these are the way they present them is really really good. Let's look at Savills. Yeah, I go. Okay, so not huge numbers. Let's move on and look at the this rate here. So what have we got here? So we've got in the order of new instructions, new instruction market share, sale agreed, and sale agreed subject to percentage. But this is where the true magic happens, ladies and gentlemen, is the exchanged and the withdrawn. Because if you add the exchange number to the withdrawn number, I just want you to look at these four columns here. Each row adds up to 100%, 66.57 and 33.43 adds up to 100%. Why is that important? Because if you recall earlier in the show, we said that the most important stat is what percentage of the homes you list did you actually get paid on and the homeowner moved. So in the last 2 years, because this is what this number says here, Gascoigne Hallam have exchanged contracts on 66.57. Jordan Fishwick at 65, Stuart Rushton at 69. So the average is 57. And it's really nice to see some of the bigger agents, because normally what you tend to find, the bigger the agent, the lower the number. And there's some really nice figures there. What we have to remember, though, here is there's some low numbers here as well. So again, and again, I'm not criticizing in any way, shape, or form, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just, data doesn't care about your feelings. And I'm not criticizing, but if I was, say, Reeds Rains, my exchange rate is 71, so 71.95. And then I divide that by the bridge, I'm up against, say, Bridgeford's. Okay. So now all of a sudden it's 54. Hold on, to take that back. Hold on. 71.95 divided by 54.49. And that is a 32% difference. So therefore, Reeds Rains could go in if they're up against Bridgeford's and say we have a 32% greater chance of getting you moved. That is
Factually.
powerful stuff. And what I would say is this, is that, that's why the power of data to get you more listings. Not only does this allow you, the Insights platform allow you to get stats that you can push out because everyone's interested in the property market, so give them the stats about the market, but you can use it to actually, to your advantage to say, yeah, with us, you've got a 32% chance. Oh, here's my laptop. This proves it. Fascinating. And again, let's just have a quick look at the numbers down here. So there's some big numbers in here. Let's just move on and just go and look at the posh end, because with the posh end, the ratios do tend to go down a bit. So again, it looks like Stuart Rushton do well at 62. Now, again, Jackson stops at 38 and Savills at 42. Again, when we get over that to the 2 and 2.5 millions, the numbers aren't so great. Um, yeah, so there's some good numbers in there, and there's some other numbers that potentially need some improvement on.
I think also, Chris, when you look at the higher end, what you're seeing is you're seeing a lot more spike in withdrawals than you are fall throughs. So again, this is people, as we said in the first half, not being able to find and it could be they're downsizing for a last move where it's we're gonna sell the big house and move into a smaller house for good. But actually, on here, we're seeing more come off the market than we are seeing
Yeah.
technically fall through.
Yeah, okay. Let's move on. I do know, I'm aware that especially this price range, there are some properties that don't make it to the books and still sell. So again, I would suspect,
Yes.
especially in this posher end, that there are going to be some exchanges that you don't see because they simply didn't hit the portals and that obviously can't be picked up. Let's just quick look at the fall through rate. The average is 25, and there are some decent numbers here. So it looks like everyone's doing really well there. Price reductions, 38%. Is there anyone that's overpriced? Not particularly. Let's move on to the next stat. Okay, so here, the stats here, I appreciate we're getting to the end of the show here, so I'll whiz through these. This is the percent, every property that is on them, that is around in the UK. 20A have an automated valuation model, like a Valpal figure, but their own AVM, and they compare that to what you put it on the market for. So here, is there any overvaluing? No, there's not. It's all nice and tight. What percentage did you achieve from the original asking price? Gascoigne Hallam 2.64. Others are higher and lower, but again, nice and tight there. And there's no one. So, but again, a lot of people don't like percentages. So therefore, if everyone put on a £700,000 house, what would you achieve? So again, Gascoigne Hallam can say we achieved £3,523 and 48 pence more for an average Golden Triangle home compared to the average. And if I was Gascoigne Hallam, I would be asking my area manager to have access to this data, because I know Connell Secrets have and basically to enable it to use it in your marketing. And there's some lovely figures there, and we'll just let the figures do the talking there. Let's move on.
Beautiful. Shout that for the rooftops.
In terms of how the average property takes 88 days to sell, and if we go down here, the top 10 agents, so Holden and Prescott are taking 44, Gascoigne Hallam 83. You just move down here and you can see how long each agent is taking to sell. Okay. So again, if you were a quick agent, the Holden Prescott seem to do the best overall. New instruction to completion, 176 days, which when you compare that the average is 88 plus 115, that means that there is 203 days. So again, there's some great stats there that you can use to prove that you're a better agent. Finally, we're in the last couple of minutes. Let's just have a quick look at the lettings. And let's see who is moving and who is shaking in the lettings market. Jordan Fishwick seemed to be the bigger agent here, but again, their market share is drifting downwards, which is in line with most estate agents, because their biggest problem in estate letting agency at the moment is open rent. Now, interestingly, nationally, they were at open rent were at 5% in 2021, and now presently at 18 or 19. Looks like they are no more than around 8 or 9%, but it's a mature market. What is interesting though is that in the last 3 years, 51.2% of the homes that open rent put on the market would previously last time the property was let with open rent. This is the biggest challenge to a estate agent, letting agency, is the fact that you're not proving your worth. That's why, as I said, Toby goes around the country doing, the Renters' Right Bill Act is such a massive opportunity for you letting agents to retain landlords and also attract them to them. Do a great buy-to-let evening, put the willies up them, pardon the pun, and they'll come flooding in if you do it right. But if you're just putting your head in the sand, which an awful lot of letting agents are, you're not proving your worth and people will ignore you. Let's have a quick look. Gascoigne Hallam, Stuart Rushton, rooftops. So again, if you're remain, I mean that's good, Mosey Jarman. If you're they're
Mm,
growing, I like that. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the number of properties that you're putting on new
yeah.
construction has a direct relationship. There is a formula that we use to calculate how many properties you've got on your books, and there is a direct relationship. And we'll finish on number 20. Oh no, we'll go down to 21 because we like Belvoir, they're part of the network. Tell you what, we'll go down to 25. There we go. These are much smaller numbers here, but again, it gives you a flavour. Right. Okay. Final thoughts. Give it to us, Toby.
I think, Chris, as we've said in the first and second half, this is a marketplace where you can really grab profitable share. You have to make sure your valuers are absolutely on point with the message, and you are canvassing where the data is telling you to canvass, which I think would be the biggest takeaway from this session, Chris. But I think this year is where added value, especially in the sales market, it is going to be the difference. And when I say added value, is making sure that you are more of a one-stop shop. Mortgages aren't going down the road, conveyancing isn't going down the road. You're handling that, and I think from a lettings point of view, and conscious of our time, Chris, we're very heavily involved in landlord evenings. I'm off to Reading tonight, and then Bristol the following week, and we're all around the country doing these events. The biggest part now is letting agents, and I'm sort of removing open rent a little bit on this one at the moment, is have we got our rents at market value? That's an absolute priority. And actually, what we're charging today, knowing that there actually is going to be more work to do tomorrow, are our charges in line with what we can substantially run a business? But it's going to be a good year, 26, Chris. But it's also not going to come in the front doors. We have to go and get it and know what our worth is.
And on those words, thank you for your time today, Toby. Exceptional as always. We will see you in a few months' time, later in the summer or late spring. And for you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. We'll see you next week for week 11 of the Property Market Stat Show. If you are a Golden Triangle agent and you've seen anything, you want to pick my brains on how that data can get you more business, don't hesitate to pick up the phone to me. My number is 07950 147 572. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, Toby, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Chris.